British, Gurkha and Malay troops have been engaged here for over 12 months in a war of fierce local engagements in appalling jungle conditions.
They don't say at the moment that a state of war exists. They've borrowed instead the Indonesian phrase. They call it a confrontation.
In the Straits of Singapore, you don't need a map to realize the threat of confrontation. For over there is Indonesia, only 1.5 miles away from this patrol ship, the coastal minesweeper Ledang of the Royal Malaysian Navy. At this point, only 3.5 miles of sea separate Sukarno's rambling empire of 3,000 islands and 100 million people from Singapore, the nerve center of Malaysia. As a result, the Straits here have become a vital area in the defense of the new federation. The Ledang is one of the 4 coastal minesweepers used by the Malaysian Navy for inshore patrols around Malaya and farther afield along the Borneo coasts. Since the ban on barter trade in August, small boats from either coast rarely venture into the Straits in daytime, though only this week 3 daylight saboteurs were killed by a similar Royal Navy patrol. The craft sighted are just inside Malaysian territorial waters. No chances are taken. The boarding party is called out. The Indonesians are told to come alongside for identification. This time, there's no job for the boarding party. The trespassers are merely Indonesian fishermen who have strayed the wrong side of the line. Understandably, they don't stay around long. Along these Indonesian coasts in the past 2 years, training camps for saboteurs and guerrillas have been set up for confrontation. From one of them, 50 miles north of Singapore, came the first of the recent Indonesian landings on the Malayan mainland. In the town, the Indonesians expected to be welcomed as liberators. Instead, they were reported to the police field force, who with New Zealand and Malay army help quickly rounded most of them up. A company of Malay troops is still looking for the half-dozen Indonesians still at large. The officer briefs his section commanders on the area and patrol details. The Indonesians the patrol are looking for have 2 advantages. First, in appearance they look like locals, and secondly, they can live off the land. Papaya, tapioca and pineapples all grow here. So far, in all 3 Indonesian raids, the Malaysian army have had to call on British and Commonwealth troops. Up till now, the guerrillas have been badly led and organised, but bigger raids by the unpredictable Indonesians might seriously stretch the forces on the mainland. Meanwhile, rumours of landings circulate every day. False reports are followed up, and the patrolling continues. Even here in Kuala Lumpur, British anti-aircraft guns have appeared in the past week on exercise to ram home to Indonesia Britain's determination to defend the Federation. And Australia's decision to start the call-up for the first time ever in peace shows how worried she is about the situation in the area. With their defence guarantee, the Malaysian government's problem is to arouse the Malaysians themselves, hence the big publicity drive for unity and the present National Solidarity Week. Ironically, Sukarno's policy of border war in Borneo and sporadic guerrilla raids on the Malayan mainland has served only to make the various states and various races more aware that they belong to one country. The man, Tunku Abdul Rahman, Prime Minister and Architect of Malaysia. The place, Freedom Stadium, Kuala Lumpur. The occasion, the launching of National Solidarity Week in all 14 states of the Malaysian Federation. A drive for unity in face of war from the giant neighbour Indonesia. The Tunku speech hammers home the need for unity against confrontation, the Indonesian term for its Crush Malaysia campaign. A campaign that has led to 18 months of border war in Borneo, an economic blockade of Malaysia, and the recent guerrilla landings in Malaya itself. rallying cry for the week is Berjaya Malaysia, victory for Malaysia, though there's nothing very victorious about the unfurling of the slogan itself. Undaunted, the school children launch into the Berjaya victory song.
These are the landing beaches of Singapore. For President Sukarno's Russian-built MiG fighters, it's only 3 minutes flying time from those islands hidden away in the haze 7 miles from the coast here. As far as Singapore, with a British base costing us £100 million a year, is concerned, this is the front line, a narrow stretch of sea that separates us from President Sukarno's troops. The British are here to protect the newly created Malaysian Federation. They don't say at the moment that a state of war exists. They've borrowed instead the Indonesian phrase. They call it a confrontation.
It was in mid-August that President Sukarno first began to pump his infiltrators and saboteurs into Malaya and the island of Singapore. Altogether, he's sent over about 500 of them so far, and almost all of them have been captured or killed. They're a mixed bag, some trained paratroopers, a few raw recruits, a few treacherous Malays. Few of them put up much of a fight. More like Fred Karno's army than Sukarno's, you might think. But there are 350,000 more troops where these came from. One prisoner told a press conference last week that Sukarno now has an army in training at a base just over the water from Singapore. Its aim, to liberate Malaysia from what Sukarno calls its neo-colonial government. The infiltrators' arms are international, mostly Russian, but they carry British and American weapons as well. So far, the raids have been little more than an irritation to Malaya and Singapore. In Borneo, it's been very different. British, Gurkha and Malay troops have been engaged here for over 12 months in a war of fierce local engagements in appalling jungle conditions. "8,000 British troops are with the Malaysian Defence Forces in Borneo. Among them, until recently, were these men of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders. Now they're back in Malaya and training hard, possibly for an early return to Borneo, possibly to help fight off the invasion of the Malaya mainland that Sukarno seems to be planning. These men spent 5 months in Borneo, guarding a line that worked out at 25 miles per man. They spent weeks without seeing the enemy, living on their nerves, waiting for the next sudden bitter clash. Their training now isn't easy going, but it's a great deal easier than Borneo. Britain's committed to help defend Malaysia by a defence treaty signed even before the Malaysian Federation was formed. The treaty provides for full military cooperation to meet any threat to Malaysia. The threat's been there since Malaysia was formed, and so have British troops. Sukarno says his aim is to clear the colonialists out of the area. He means the British, though so far the main result of his confrontation policy has been to keep us in the area. The Argylls are using a Singapore swimming pool to practice river crossing. Every bit as wet as the jungle rivers of Borneo, they say, but a lot cleaner. They take Sukarno's threats seriously enough at the War Office in London to have rushed out these paratroopers from England this week. Sukarno's army is reckoned at 440,000, with another 100,000 in his Air Force and Navy. While British paras arrived in Malaya, the 1st Battalion of Scots Guards were moving out, bound for Borneo. Singapore is an island the size of the Isle of Wight, with a population nearly double that of Manchester, most of them Chinese. 23 years ago, Singapore fell to the Japanese. Now the threat comes from the south, but despite this, it's business as usual in the wealthiest trading centre of the Far East. The men of this battery, just outside Singapore, were rushed to Malaya with only 24 hours to pack when the gun emplacements were set up to deter any attempt the Indonesians might make to sabotage the nearby RAF base. They came from the Rhine Army. Their work here means long watches, day and night, for airstrikes or small boatloads of infiltrators. And what of the man who's caused all this? President Sukarno, leader of 100 million Indonesians since the country was formed 20 years ago. For him, time is running out. He's 64 and a sick man. Doctors gave him 1 year to live on his one remaining kidney if he didn't go to Vienna for an operation. He was to have gone this week. He didn't. Last year he boasted that he'd crush Malaysia by the time the cock crew on January the 1st, 1965. He didn't. Now the palace intrigues are at work around him. His country's economy is shaky. His Crush Malaysia campaign so far aborted. Is he now planning to unite his people with a final all-out attack on the Federation he so bitterly resents?
Chaos. Is it true that we are starving?
But if President Sukarno does decide to get rough, or his aides push him into something rash and he uses a larger part of his 500,000 strong army against Malaya and the island of Singapore, then he's in for quite a shock.
It's early afternoon last Friday. HMS Wilkeston sets out to patrol the narrow waters of Sukarno's Confrontation. Built as minesweepers, these little ships bristle with guns now for the unaccustomed job of policing the straits that separate Indonesia's Rio Islands from Singapore and Malaya. Wilkeston's sister ship Chawton turns eastward. Chawton's patrol sometimes takes her to within 200 yards of Indonesia's 3-mile limit. Her job, to intercept any craft carrying invaders across to Malaysia. At this point, only 6 or 7 miles separate the Indonesian islands, in the background here, from the vital installations of Singapore. 4:10. Chawton's skipper, Lieutenant Tony Smith, he's 29, spots a junk and decides to investigate. She could be fishing. She could be carrying up to 50 armed invaders. The junk gets orders to heave to, and Chawton's boarding party prepares for action. The chances are the junk is innocent, but chances aren't taken. The boarding party are on call 24 hours a day during a patrol, and a patrol lasts 5 days. Bren gun cover from the upper deck. A few days before, sister ship Wilkeston had grenades thrown on board her when she closed with a boat. This time Chawton has no trouble. The junk's crew come meekly on board and submit to searching and questioning from a Malay policeman who acts as interpreter and has powers of arrest. Lieutenant David Elliott, who's 26 and in charge of the boarding party, searches the junk with a seaman. All the boarding party carry Sterling submachine guns. The junk is cleared. Her cargo, not rifles and grenades, but raffia mats. Her crew can return to their lawful occasions. Quarter to 5 in the evening, Chawton's patrol resumed, and rewarded by a fine view of the aircraft carrier Victorious and her main armament of Buccaneer strike aircraft. Victorious carries 25 planes and 8 helicopters. She's just been joined by a bigger carrier, Eagle. The Royal Navy has a larger fleet in these waters than at any time since Korea. Though a very junior member of the force, Chawton's still a formidable opponent for any junk or sampan. As dusk approaches, she tests her twin Oerlikons, ready for action in the night. Night is the time when most crossings are made. Chawton's radar picks up a signal. a parachute flare is fired. The time just after midnight. This time it's a tiny fishing boat that's discovered. Once again, the checking procedure goes into action. These checks are no fun for anyone, but the Navy claim the fishermen benefit from the patrolling. Many Malay fishermen have been attacked by Indonesian ships at night. Some have had their boats stolen. Again, Chawton draws a blank. The fishermen are cleared. 3 hours later, sister ship Wilkeston picked up 2 would-be invaders. And that same night, despite the Navy's vigilance, a group of 20 of Sukarno's tattered vanguard managed to slip through the net. Once they're ashore, they're a job for the army. And early Saturday morning, men of the Malayan regiment move into the area to capture the ones that got away from the Navy. Malay villagers help the soldiers, and it's not long before the first prisoners are brought in, cold and muddy after their night in the unfriendly jungle. Not a shot has been fired. It was Sukarno's plan that these men should make their way to a secret rendezvous deep in the Malayan jungle and there gather forces for a serious attack. If any have got through, and at most they can only be a handful, they can count on no support from the Malays. Captivity, with bottles of beer for consolation, seems a highly desirable alternative. This is the Pontian area, west of Singapore, and the region of most of Sukarno's landings. This Saturday morning, Pontian Police Station has a distinguished visitor, Tunku Abdul Rahman, Malaysia's premier, a man who's confronted confrontation with patience and restraint. The Tunku studies dum-dum bullets the Indonesians brought with them, and a display of other arms, grenades, ammunition, guns, many made in Russia, some in America or Britain. However good a briefing the Indonesians got before they set off the day before, and there's little evidence that they get much at all, they can hardly have been prepared for so distinguished a reception committee, or an interrogation so good-natured.
Don't see. Boleh mengeluarkan apa nama?
Saya dapat BA Honours degree di University di Bandung dalam history, Honours in history.
Jadi dia ngarang cerita serkat.
Mana serkat?
Serkat dekat pokok. Tempat dia naik.
Masuk dalam.
Itu tunjuk peta ni. Sini pokok di sini tunggu. Ini naik. Tarik timbun serkat ni di kawasan serkat.
Mana yang nak pergi tu? Tujuan nak pergi ke mana?
Saya nak main raya sini kot.
For these men, it's all over. Their comrades are being rounded up outside. And at sea, the Royal Navy's watch continues.
A platoon of the Royal Ulster Rifles on patrol this week in some of the worst fighting country in the world, the jungles of Borneo. They've been in Borneo nearly a year now. The strange struggle has been going on twice as long, ever since President Sukarno of Indonesia launched his policy of confrontation against the newborn Federation of Malaysia. It's here, along the 1,000-mile jungle frontier, that confrontation has been most fierce and persistent. Some 3,000 Indonesian border raiders have been killed or captured. In recent weeks, Sukarno has been massing large numbers of troops along the border, and that means intensified patrolling work for the Royal Ulster Rifles and platoon commander Alex Shooter.
Hello, 2-2, Sunray speaking, set trap. Animate November Tango Romeo, own troops 2-2 Bravo, Romeo Tango Bravo. Full stop break, out. Okay. Another blank. Whose turn tomorrow?
Call McPherson.
Must be Malaysia.
Okay. Can you go down to the southeast track to Whiskey and take 5 of your own and a tracker? Yeah. You want those trees blown, sir? Yeah. Can you get the V off Sergeant? Thompson, you go with him with the radio. And that's it. Airdrop this evening. Right, okay.
The problem for 6th Platoon, B Company, the Royal Ulster Rifles, perched on top of Nibong Hill, is pretty much the same one as the one that faces Major General Walter Walker, Director of Borneo Operations. Although there hasn't been a contact for some weeks now, Indonesians have been quietly slipping over the frontier and probing our forward positions on reconnaissance trips. Sukarno has ordered these trips, while at the same time he has doubled the battalion strength on the frontier opposite the Kuching sector. For Lieutenant Alex Shuter and Major General Walter Walker, the great problem is to know when Sukarno feels he has seen enough and where he will launch his new troops. If that day comes, the peace on Nibong Hill, which means literally the place of the palm tree, will be violently shattered. It'll be tough even on the rats.
Right.
Repeat.
The mortar's a vital weapon in this sort of country that Alex Shooter's getting to know very well indeed.
Well, it vary between 10, 20 yards. It can change to thick jungle, visibility 15 yards, sometimes 30 yards if we're lucky, or swamp. The swamp can be sometimes treacherous, 16, 17 feet deep in places and completely impassable. Rivers, every 100, 200 yards. Tall grass, lalang as we call it, palm trees, and in fact, a country that we wouldn't find anywhere in our own part of the world in Europe.
The lieutenant, who's 21, commands a platoon of 38 men, average age 20. With one exception, they're all Irishmen, 12 of them from the Irish Republic. They live on a fortified hill less than 2 miles from Sukarno's border. Their job is to watch 60 square miles of territory. Out here, they're saving about £7 a week each. They still have to shave every day. Each man wears 2 identity discs. If he's killed, one will mark his grave, the other's taken home by his officer. They spend a lot of time talking of home, writing home, dreaming of the cars and houses they'll buy when they get home.
How long have you been out here?
Oh, since last February, sir.
You married?
As a matter of fact, I am. Youngest married in the platoon. Married 24 hours before I came out.
Did you have any notice of the fact you were coming out?
Oh, yes, I did. About 48 hours notice.
Was it very tough when you first came?
Well, it was at first couple of weeks, and then after that I began to accept the fact that I had to stay out here and that there's nothing I could do about it.
How many letters do you get a week from your wife?
Oh, roughly 3, maybe sometimes if it's bad 2.
Pleasantest of the soldiers' jobs has been that of making friends with the local Dayak and Iban tribespeople. The locals, though they're all Malaysians now, didn't get on at all with the Malay troops who were here last summer. But they make friends easily with British and Gurkha soldiers. And good relations mean a steady flow of information from the villages around. The river nearby is strictly not for swimming. The water carries leptospirosis, a bug that can kill by affecting the brain. Other natural hazards include 6-inch scorpions, 9-inch rats and poisonous snakes. The Ulster riflemen are here to protect the longhouse where 50 Dayaks live. Last July, Indonesian raiders hanged 2 Dayaks here when they refused to give them food. The Malaysian Defence Forces are commanded from here, Labuan Island off Borneo's north coast. The reason is the airstrip. Built initially by the Japanese conquerors 20 years ago, it's now Borneo's busiest airfield. And behind the massive Beverley transporters, one of Borneo's busiest planes comes into land, the little Beaver aircraft that brings Major General Walter Walker to work, prompt at 8:45 each morning. General Walker is 52. He's been called our finest jungle general. Born in India, commissioned into the Gurkhas, he spent most of his active service in the Far East, much of it in the jungles of Malaya. General Walker will be leaving the Borneo Command in a month's time. Meanwhile, from his Labuan headquarters, he directs and plans the defense of Malaysian Borneo in the face of mounting threats from Indonesian Borneo, Kalimantan.
General Walker, can you give me an estimate on the numbers of Indonesian troops that face you along the frontier?
Well, up till now I've been working on about 5,000 Indonesian troops all along the frontier. That's fairly close to the frontier. And I would say with the reinforcements coming in, it could be twice that number.
What sort of troops are they?
Up till now they've been volunteers and regular troops. Some of the regular troops are from Kalimantan itself, and some are from Java. Now, the ones that are coming in, I think, are from outside Kalimantan. TNI, that is their regular army. Some of them will be ordinary infantry, some will be RPKAD, parachute troops, and some are KKO, which would be the equivalent of our Marine commandos.
How would they compare with our troops in the jungle?
Well, I think we've got to remember that we train some of their officers in jungle warfare. What we have met up to date has been, in some cases, pretty good trash. But we should not underestimate soldiers like the KKO, the RPKAD, some of these reinforcements who have been properly jungle trained.
Are we stretched to the absolute limit at the moment in Borneo?
In the way of troops? I wouldn't like to say that we're stretched as tight as a violin string. I have got my reinforcements, and I'm very happy to have them. And with the reinforcements go helicopters, and the more helicopters you have, the bigger the frontier you can cover, and the happier I am.
Control of the air is vital, and General Walker has it, though the call for still more helicopters is a continuous one. In a few minutes, they can hop distances that would take men on the ground days to cover. Reinforcements move up to the frontier. We're not allowed to say where. The Belvedere helicopters are the lifeline for Walker's jungle patrols. The Dayaks call them flying longhouses. Back on Nibong Hill, Alex Shooter's platoon prepare to take an airdrop of supplies. A gas balloon marks the spot. Dayak children enjoy the show and the prospect of tins of sweets by parachute. Across the hills to the north now, the Valletta supply plane homes in. The dropping zones marked by smoke canisters. And in a few moments, the supplies are on their way. Tinned food, sweets for the children, British newspapers, a few comics, letters from home, written perhaps only 5 days ago.
If Sukarno was to try a big push, would he get a very bad beating?
I think so. I think we've got plans to cope with that.
If they are to use larger numbers of incursions, presumably they've got to have some support from the civil population.
Well, they can get that. We've got in Sarawak as a whole, particularly in the Kuching area and the 3rd Division of Sarawak, these CCO, the Communist Clandestine Organization, practically 100% Chinese. And the total strength of their supporters is something like 20,000. If they can get into those black areas, the CCO black areas, they'll find friends, they'll find refuge, they'll find food and clothing and information. And the same applies in Sabah, in the area around Tawau, which I think is another vulnerable area. You have got something like 11,000 Indonesian immigrant workers. And even if only 10% of those are subverted, it's a tidy sum.
Which particular sector do you look upon most as being the danger point?
My two flanks. Firstly, dealing with Sabah, the area of Tawau, where the frontier goes straight through the middle of an island called Sabatic. Half of that island belongs to us, and half of it belongs to him. So the frontier is as close as that. And the port of Tawau, that's a very, I think, vulnerable target. And secondly, obviously, the other flank, Kuching, the capital, Sarawak, close to the frontier, 3 days' march from the frontier, and extremely close to the coast. And a big population and a big CCO black area. And that is a very vulnerable target.
The Royal Ulster Rifles are on the Kuching flank, facing an Indonesian parachute battalion. While they wait for the threatened attack, it's a matter of keeping in training and checking up on every sign of Indonesian activity on this side of the frontier.
Right. Now, we've received information from one of David's Dayaks that he believes, he was in the paddy field this morning, and he believes that there's enemy footprints at Alpha. Now, we'll have to check this. What we do, we leave here, take 16. Corporal McClure, your section lead, 2 section take the rear, and you come with me with the tracker, and we'll bring David. You come, David?
Yes.
What goes? When we get to the LZ, to Alpha, if Corporal McClure, if your section covers it, Corporal, you can go across, all right? Okay. Cover the other side. You go about 50 yards on the far side, go down, and that'll allow Corporal Main, myself, David, and the tracker to have a look at the area and just see if there is anything in it. Straight forward, out to Alpha. Let's have a look. All jacked up? All jacked up. Any problems?
No, sir.
No. Okay, let's go. Okay, David? Okay. Oh, of course. Okay, chaps.
Yet another patrol moves off into the jungle. It's a strange, frustrating business. Action can come at any moment out of the blue. Any day now could bring war, real war, not confrontation anymore. It's all up to Sukarno whether to attack, when and where. The young Irish rifleman can only guess and wait and stay prepared in this uncomfortable country, such a long, long way from Tipperary and Belfast and Donaghadee.